What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? I'm the Godless engineer, and I critically analyze apologist claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Today, we're examining what marriage looks like in the Bible. In this third video, Dr. Jennifer Bird and I discuss how Matthew chapter 19 verses 3 through 12 does not actually condemn divorce, nor does it define traditional marriage. Dr. Bird challenges the traditional readings of this passage. Dr. Bird challenges the traditional readings of this passage by exposing how this passage focuses on sexual control, gender hierarchies, and non-normative identities, rather than affirming marriage as a sacred union. If you want to find out how Matthew chapter 19 verses 3 through 12 do not condemn divorce, nor does it define traditional marriage, then please stay tuned. Okay.
Yeah.
If anybody wants way more information surrounding this, analyzing both of these verses from definitely a more granular sort of level, definitely get Dr. Bird's book here, because I mean it's fantastic. Like when I start reading it, I can't put it down. I'm just saying, like I'll just keep reading it. Yeah.
Thank you. I will also say, just really briefly, I do have the audio recorded, and I'm just waiting for the go ahead from the publisher to be able to release it. Yeah, 'cause I know that helps.
I'm
That works for
definitely
me.
using one of my Audible credits for
Okay.
that.
Sweet.
I'm always looking for good books to get, and that's definitely one I'm going to want to have in my library.
That's so nice of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So so moving on to the Newer Testament, which is Matthew 19. I can't remember the verse exactly.
Okay.
I know, but
Yep.
which verse is it that we need to go to?
Yeah. Well, if you're gonna pull it up, I would look at Matthew 19, 3 to 12. But the piece that people focus on is 4 to 6. So you
Yeah.
can, yeah.
They
So
definitely like to cherry pick a lot out of
that's
the
right.
Bible in general.
Yes, but most people do, even when you're doing it for left-leaning purposes.
Yeah.
Because you have to,
Well,
right? Go ahead.
yeah. Well, I was just gonna say, whenever I bring up, things and people are like, "Oh, that's out of context," I'm like, "Well, let's read the context then." And so, like, I try to read like around it to make sure that I'm not misrepresenting it. So I
Right.
definitely value keeping things in context. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so this passage, yes, when people quote, they quote verses 4 to 6. And which is interesting because verse 3 makes it opens up that they're not even talking about marriage specifically, they're talking about for which reason is Jesus okay with divorce. But this verse, taken 4 to 6, taken out of context, is used to say that divorce is not okay. So so Pharisees come to him, they test him. Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any cause? That is a shorthand way of getting at couple hundred years of debate and like debates amongst Jews about for which reason is it okay to divorce, right? So there's Hillel and Shammai, they're two groups in general. But so it's a shorthand way, and most people don't realize that. But anyway, he answers playing along with the way this debate has played out for several hundred years. Right? He says, have you not read that the one who made them at the beginning, quote, made them male and female, which is pulling from Genesis 1, and said from Genesis 2:24, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother, be joined to his woman, it should say, and the two shall become one flesh. So he's just quoted the two verses we just discussed, right? As
Mhm.
have all of the Jewish men before him. He's not doing something new here. He's just playing along. And then he follows up again in a way that was not new. So they are no longer two but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. End of discussion for people quoting this out of context. And so, then they said to him, why then did Moses command us to give him a certificate of dismissal? Blah, blah, blah. He said, it's because you were too hard-hearted, yada, yada. But the beginning was not so. And here's a piece where I think, I don't know for sure if this is new in terms of the conversation, but this to me ought to be included in defining marriage, biblical marriage, because of what it says, which is what you were talking about earlier. This makes it very clear, verse 9. to me, but it took me a while to see it. So, and I say to you, whoever divorces his woman except for sexual immorality and marries another, there is a verb to marry in the Newer Testament, commits adultery. And he who marries a divorced woman commits adultery. So, what this is showing us is that Jesus is agreeing with the Hebrew Bible way of talking about pairing up, which is that the only thing that's talked about when it comes to marriage is sex, having sex. The only thing that matters. We're never told, we don't give any stories about healthy relationships and communication and caring for each other. When it's talked about, it's a man goes into a woman. When they talk about marriage in the Newer Testament, it's only in light of sex. So this is part of the bigger conversation from my perspective. People are tend to be hung up on who is having sex together and therefore what kind of sex it's going to be. Is it able to be reproductive and so forth and so on? And in part, that's because the biblical texts set people up to only focus on the sexual intercourse, the intimacy part of it. And here, like I like to phrase, I know that you're a married man, right?
Mhm.
You know, I actually am not going to really put you on the spot, but sometimes I just ask people, so what are the top 5 things that define your marriage? Like, what is it that makes your marriage a marriage?
Mhm.
And I'll playfully ask, or just say, well, I'm sure sex is probably in the top 5, but it's not the only thing, right? it's it isn't the thing that, and I didn't mean to say, like, maybe you two are asexual. I mean, it's possible, right? But that not terribly likely, but it's possible here. So the point here is he is focusing in on the reason you can't divorce is because you're going to have sex again. The reason you can't separate from this person is you will pair up again, and having sex with a second person or this other person is a cheating on this first person that you had sex with. And so the whole framework, the whole language around marriage and defining marriage is that the sex act. No wonder so many people are hung up on that. Can't get past
Mhm.
that or think that that needs to be the thing that defines who can get together.
Yeah, I guess where my brain kind of goes with this is, I guess this is, I guess generally people think, well, in the Hebrew Bible, they don't specify that men can only get married once or they can only have one wife. So it's kind of like, why is this even an issue? I guess maybe is where it goes to. But I guess
Mhm,
this
mhm.
passage is really talking about the consequences of divorcing a woman, with the exception of the sexual immorality bit, and then continuing to have sex with other women. I
To marry
guess.
another, taking
Yeah,
pair up again.
yeah.
The reason, yeah, exactly. The reason that divorce is not okay in this passage, according to Jesus, is that you're gonna remarry. You're gonna have sex with someone else. That's the reason the divorce is a problem, not what is very real to many people today. The heartache, the difficulty, the ripping families apart. You lose people, right? If you are a divorced couple, right? You lose friends and you lose family members you might have really enjoyed seeing at family gatherings, or how hard it can be on the children, or your own resources are now not pooled but are separate, and that is hard, right? That
Mhm,
is hard. And all of those things, like, that's what makes divorce unfortunate. But
mhm,
that isn't on the table at all in this conversation. And so the fact that Jesus himself is saying, yeah, the reason divorce is a problem is you might have sex with someone else, like, that is what his Hebrew Bible has taught him to think about. And it is one of the more tragic verses in the Bible, in my opinion, because of this. Like, this verse, 19:9, is really tragic because so many people just take it in and say, yep, I mean, Jesus said it, of all people, right? Divorce, you can't get divorced. I mean, that's the worst thing, like, no, let's look at why he thought, if we're going to posit that the guy Jesus actually said this, like, that's a whole other conversation, but
yeah.
what was going on in the thinking here? It's still very much about men owning women, women's bodies, why, this all these issues of pristineness around a woman and sex and all that. I mean, all of that's in the background, but focusing in on that, right? Focusing in on the sex part is the problem, right? That's just very unhealthy. It's
Yeah.
I just think it's wrong, and it's so harmful, over the centuries. It has just been terribly harmful.
Yeah, it kinda seems to reinforce this sexual objectification of women,
Totally,
right?
totally. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And
Absolutely. Go ahead. Yeah.
I feel like, looking at this, that, I can totally see how a lot of Christians would not even want to broach the whole topic of the fact that this only concerns men's ability to divorce a woman and not, like, a woman having the right to, like, divorce based on sexual immorality or anything like that.
Women were not allowed to initiate a divorce. Yes, yes, and yes. I mean, well said. I mean, right? It's all of
Yeah.
it. It's about what a man can and cannot do with a woman.
It's
Yeah.
just it's really weird because, you have a lot of people now that, put Jesus up on a pedestal,
Of
and I'm
course.
not saying that he doesn't have, like, good qualities that he teaches, but, it seems rather weird to put somebody up on a pedestal that's like, "Oh, yeah, women don't," or at least to the point of not discussing the ability of women to have any kind of say in their
Right.
marital, relationships. It seems
Right.
kinda weird, right?
It Yes, I wanna just let that sit for a second. I'm like, "Yes, it does." And 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 it's hard for people in Christian communities to be able to see this, right? It's really hard because that pokes a hole in something really important for them, and I get that, but that's why, like, I struggled with, to a certain degree, some of the things I put in this book, I almost like, 5 years ago, I'm not sure I would have put in there. But but that's why I decided I needed to, right?
Mhm.
Because people don't want to see these things about Jesus in particular. Here, he's suggesting that he's kind of reinforcing this women are objects, right? But also, and this was I will never forget this. I was having a conversation by Zoom like many years ago, pre-pandemic, before it was a big thing, and I remember having this conversation with a very conservative fundamentalist evangelical, and I said something about Matthew 19. I said, "Well, what about Jesus's comments about eunuchs at the end of that exchange?" And he physically shook, and he just changed the conversation, changed the subject, and I was like, "No, but here's the thing, John," and I was saying it to him at the time, "But here's the thing. This is all still setup. We haven't gotten to the point that the writer of Matthew is trying to make here. So
Mhm.
this is all just preliminary stuff, and it's verses 10 to 12 that I think are really juicy."
The
And
the the those verses are the ones I made the meme about, but
good. Oh,
I'll
good. I'll have to go
sorry.
look it up. I wanna see what you did. Yeah, so, when it's the disciples react like, "Oh my gosh, if that's the case, it's better for us not to marry to begin with," and he's kinda like, "Yeah, probably." He doesn't challenge that. He just keeps moving. He's like, "Yeah, not everyone can handle this teaching, but only those to whom it's given. There are eunuchs who've been so from birth. There are eunuchs who've been made that by others, and there are eunuchs who've made themselves for the sake of the kingdom. Let anyone accept this who can." I mean, that is the exact opposite of being fruitful and multiplying, right?
Yep.
So we're quoting out of context, "Be fruitful, multiply" up here in 4 to 6, but the point that Jesus is making is it's pretty radical. It is non-hetero, and it is non-reproductive, because eunuchs were known, not whether or not it's true, they had a reputation for being adept at sexual encounters with men and women, and they are not reproducing. I mean, that undermines traditional family values as defined in this country, right?
Yeah. I sorry for interrupting, but
No,
I
go, go,
remember
go.
I remember, this section because I read it and really and it was like I just dawned on me, like, what this actually means, this section. But I like, you put in there, like, the proclivity of eunuchs for being, very sexual in nature. Uh but the one thing that made me chuckle was you were talking about, I can't remember the girl's name in the Hebrew Bible. The one where the eunuchs went out and procured like all of the young girls for the king.
The Book of
I want to
Esther.
say
Yeah.
Esther.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, the eunuch that was taking care of Esther like knew how to please the king, like knew how to be the chosen one. And it's like, how did he know that?
Isn't that great? Yeah,
Yeah.
I had a friend point that out to me in, Peterson Toscano, and I was like, "Oh my."
That you
Whichever
don't
way
get
you get
you
yeah,
yeah, you don't get taught that in Sunday school, and I just know that.
that part isn't read very closely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But as far as the eunuchs, I know
yeah.
that you talk about like, the what it means to be a eunuch at this time, and I'm just
Mhm.
kind of wondering if you can explain that a little bit because Jesus seems to be like in favor, of the whole being a eunuch or what it means to be a eunuch in this
Yeah,
situation.
exactly. I am I'm also I was just gonna plop into the chat, I don't know which if I put it in here, does it show up in both streams? I'm not quite sure.
It should if you're logged in over here. Yeah, well, it's on yours, but I can definitely put it in mine.
Okay, okay. I mean, that would be great. Um, the reason I'm sharing that is on that website, I have linked the article that I draw from in this part of the chapter because it's really meaty. I mean, it's biblical scholarship, traditional biblical scholarship, which tends to be very, you know, dense. And so the essence, like what it boils down to for me in terms of trying to apply it in this context is within the first century context, there's already, I mean, eunuchs have been around. It's not like it's a new thing. Um, and the reputation associated with them is around gender. So they were often talked about as like either, and this is the way they're talked about. I don't think of it this way, but as some sort of abnormality or something grotesque, or even the language of a third gender was used, so that they were both male and female, and therefore neither or something other, right? So I find that interesting that Jesus is being affirming of of bodies that are non-binary by definition or by perception, right? Um, so there's that piece historically. There's also what we were just joking about, which is, you know, when people often say, "Well, once a man is castrated, he can't have sex." I'm like, well, that's interesting. Two things. One, if they're castrated post puberty, they can sometimes still get an erection. But two, you were assuming that sex is only about sticking it in something.
That they have a very limited view of sex in that case, yes.
Right? And it's actually kind of tragic.
Mhm.
Yeah. So those are and so he points out and he points to all these different, in Greek and Roman stories and philosophers and writers and all this, so it's not this is it's a researched, point that he's making here, that castrated men, right, eunuchs are were good adept at pleasing both men and women, and there are women, wealthy women over the centuries sometimes preferred a eunuch as their lover because it was, child prevention, childbirth,
Mhm.
good. What am I trying to say? Good. um so
Like contraceptive.
thank you. I was like, what am I trying to say here? Yes, kind of, it's a good, yeah, prophylactic. Anyway, it's complicated because there are also people who are associated with specific different religious temples or cults or, traditions whose priests would be specifically, castrated, and that would be part of their role is, or part, if you're going to be a priest for so and so, that's that's part of what goes on. And so people are saying, some people have pushed back on what I'm presenting here, saying, well, isn't he really just kind of saying something about over here and the, priests and things? And I'm like, you know what? All of those things are true. All of the things that particular religious tradition in particular in that region is mentioned in the article. If people want to go look that up, and there are resources you can turn to find the writings about them. But from my perspective, what I think is really helpful for us is to look at what is being endorsed by Jesus. So for people for whom it matters what Jesus says, like, yeah, in verse 9, he just reinforced that women are property. And in verse 12, he affirms a non-binary person who can't reproduce. Like, we've got a lot of messages going on here in the biblical texts, but within a span of 10 or 12 verses, we've just gone from endorsing being fruitful. Well, actually, that's not even referenced specifically here, right? But we have the same passage is talking about being fruitful and multiplying, and then we've also endorsed people who absolutely cannot. That's a pretty striking set of realities in terms of biblical messages about what is okay or expected or whatever, validated by God. I mean, for people for whom Jesus is God, God is endorsing non-binary humans who have non-hetero sex.
Yeah.
It's just a thing. And the history of the church turns this reference to eunuchs into being celibate, which is deeply ironic. But it's partly because so many men in the early church were taking this very seriously and were castrating themselves. And so the very first council of kind of church leaders in the Mediterranean area, happened in the year 325 Common Era, and was the emperor Constantine is the one who said, you guys need to get your shit together. So like, you arguing over these theological ideas is going to split my empire. So could you get together and make some decisions about some things? It's called the Nicene Council. But the very first proclamation that they made at that meeting was, if you have castrated yourself, you are not allowed to be a leader in the church. That's how common and how problematic the practice became. So subsequent to that council, church leaders started rereading this passage about eunuchs as being about being celibate, not having sex. People who choose to not have sex, which is just funny. But most people today read this thing about eunuchs and think, oh, they're celibate. They're not, because eunuchs can't have sex. Eunuchs are, well, that's not true, actually. So yeah, it's a fascinating thing to me, passage.
Yeah, it seems like if Jesus wanted to focus on being celibate, then he would just focus on that, right? Like he would just say that. I mean,
Exactly.
it's not like they didn't have a word for celibacy, and he didn't have to necessarily dress it up with some kind of like poetic language here. He could have just been like that those that don't have sex are better off, or
Right,
something like
right.
that, right?
Yes, the people who wanna be priests in my community just are not having sex. Yes, they can just say it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do have the meme that I made
Oh, good,
that
good. I'd
was
love to see it.
inspired, and okay. Let's see. So it says, "Hey dudes, if you're serious about getting into heaven, you'll do a DIY nut removal or let your bro do it. Just don't show up with your jewels, okay?"
Yes, I love it. I love it. Matthew 19:12. I mean, that's great. That's great. I can't remember if I put it in the book or not, but when I first started thinking about this, I'm like, yeah, I've actually thrown this out at people who are bugging me, like on Twitter or whatever. I'm like, so when are you and your brother, when are you and your buddies going to castrate yourself? Yeah, just do that. And 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 also, can you just imagine a Matthew 19 booth at Promise Keepers?
Come on, bros.
Right? Right?
You want to get into heaven? This is
That's
the
right.
fast track
That's
right
right.
here.
We are serious devote. Yeah, we are serious disciples.
Oh man. All right. So I find that this is rather intriguing, considering all the rhetoric that's usually thrown around about traditional marriage in the, as ordained by God or whatnot, because it definitely, if you believe that Jesus is God in some kind of way, and he's over here seeming to, affirm not only a non-binary type of gender as well
Mhm,
as non-heterosexual relationships or non-heterosexual unions or whatever. It seems to be very counter to their general line about it. So it seems like this could be like, like, I feel secure in if somebody comes up and be like, well, God doesn't like gays, and it's like, okay, and or them saying that trans people don't exist. It's like, oh well, I mean, Jesus seems to be perfectly fine with non-binary or people that don't exactly match the normal gender, norms or whatnot, and
mhm,
also seems to be perfectly fine with non heteronormative relationships. So I mean, I don't know what you're talking about.
mhm, mhm. I mean, exactly. It feels to me like the linchpin, you know?
Yeah,
This verse. It could, if people just took it more seriously. I created a couple short videos trying to highlight this, like, this is why I care about Matthew 19:12, because it's words in Jesus' mouth, and what Jesus says is really powerful for a lot of people. And goodness, this is a game changer, but so many people have other things associated with it. They can't hear that, or they just want, whatever. Same kind of
yeah,
pushback that you were talking about you have when you point out something in about like Mary or whatever, and people push back because
yeah.
it makes them it's too far, too much.
Was there anything that we didn't get a chance to cover concerning this particular passage?
I don't think so. And I think yeah, here's the well, if we've already kind of stated this, but here's one of the quotes is eunuchs were universally characterized by the frequency, ease, and adeptness with which they performed sex acts with both men and women.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's the but
Yeah,
yeah, so both the eunuch piece, which is really powerful and important, and people in trans communities today tend to appreciate what's going on for eunuchs in terms of there's something changing about their bodies, whether it's done intentionally by them or has been done to them. I mean, it's a different scenario for sure. But I know that um, I've had many trans people reach out to me and talk about this. That for them, eunuchs are really important. Anyway, so I find it interesting, and I try to listen and learn from that. But also, I mean, I'm kind of seeming hypocritical. I just wanna acknowledge that, right? Because I'm highlighting verse 12 because I like what it's saying, because what it's pointing out, and I'm not thrilled with verse 9, and I'm pointing that out, right? So
mhm,
that I realize what I'm doing, right? I realize that I'm saying this is nasty, but it's put in Jesus' mouth, and so let's pay attention to that. And by the way, this is great, and it's put in Jesus, like, this is the nature of these texts, right? Is
mhm.
there's a lot of contradiction, there are a lot of ancient ideas, yada yada, and then there's these surprising things that happen, and then there's this, and so it's anyway. I just wanted to acknowledge that because I know that's something that people
Yeah.
sometimes are like, wait,
No, yeah, I understand that, but I kind of feel, I guess the way that I take it is just highlighting how our understanding of these texts has been manipulated and changed from
hmm
what it
hmm
truly means. Because it's like,
hmm
nowadays, people aren't going to know like how adept eunuchs were at
right,
switching, their sex partners and everything, and that Jesus was speaking favorably. Like Jesus didn't take offense to being called a eunuch. I mean,
exactly,
I
yes,
feel like it's very much akin to like if anybody calls me like gay or slur for gay or whatnot, I'm like, so what if I am? Like that's
Mhm.
kind of the energy that kind of brings. But I also think that it's important to highlight how the problematic nature of like verse 9. Like I mean, Jesus having complicated, nuanced positions on things, whether some are good or some are bad, just seems to be like a normal thing, right?
Exactly.
Thank you, heathens, for watching my conversation with Dr. Jennifer Bird. If you would like to continue this discussion, either stay tuned or click this video. Otherwise, before you go, make sure you go down below and leave a comment with your thoughts on this section of the discussion. While you're down there, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe if you like this kind of content. And as always, don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.